So, good morning, everyone. Today's webinar, hosted by the E-Extension Financial Security for All community, is about families and inheritance, new and proven educational resources and strategies. We are very pleased to have as our presenter Marlene Stum, who is a professor in social science at the University of Minnesota. Marlene is passionate about improving financial literacy and decision-making in later life families, and she has 27 years of experience in family economics and social gerontology research and extension outreach, addressing financing long-term care, end-of-life advanced care planning, elder family financial exploitation, and inheritance and intergenerational resource transfers. And perhaps most important for today, she has 20 years of leadership for Who Gets Grandma's Yellow Pie Plate, which I know you're all very anxious to hear about. So Marlene, please go ahead.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone, for joining in today. I knew I had a full agenda, so now I'm really going to have to move quickly. But here's what we're going to try to cover. I want to talk some about why families and inheritance matters, the relevancy of the programming, and give you a brief history of the program. Actually, probably should say 22 years and going strong. I want to spend time talking about a new product that we have, a Workshop Facilitators Toolkit, and explain to you what's in it and convince you that you should probably update your materials. I'll give a brief, probably very brief research update and leave some time for questions and answers. So that's my agenda and where I hope to be going. As we get started, I would love it if you in the chat box would share briefly kind of what state you're representing, and if you are non-extension, if you would give us an example of the agency or organization you're with as we move forward. So we're going to focus on families and inheritance. It's a fascinating issue for me, at least. I think inheritance offers lots of complexities. It's one of those that doesn't nicely fit in a box of belonging to any one discipline. It's a mixture of resource management, of family relationships, financial, legal, social, emotional complexities. So it really does, it's an ideal multidisciplinary topic to try to understand and address. It's also an issue that we know few families escape. It's one of those that almost all families are going to need to make some type of decisions. Even if they don't have a lot of money, almost all of us have some kind of accumulated possessions. And titles, property, obviously, is that what has evidence of ownership. Typically, we think of as having financial value, the home, a car, a stock. Non-titled is that which is really everything else. It's the possessions from the Cool Whip containers to really priceless family heirlooms that you might think about in your family. We know that over time, there really, regretfully, hasn't been a dramatic change in how prepared families are to address estate planning. The vast majority of adults die without an up-to-date will. Many who have a will fail to address both titled and non-titled. And we also know that many families really prefer to kind of stick with the informal planning and conversations, if they have conversations at all, trusting their family members to do what's best or take care of things. And there's obviously lots of consequences for all of those possible possibilities of not being prepared for inheritance issues. It also means that as educators, we have lots of opportunities for emphasizing the importance of planning, helping people find tools that will work for them, and again, emphasizing the role of both titled and non-titled possessions. I also really want to emphasize that I think it's typical that we think about inheritance as a one-time decision, but it isn't. Really, people are faced with inheritance decisions at multiple points in time. It could be that you're making decisions what to give while you're alive. It could be things after death. In the case of possessions, it's often, again, an ongoing kind of process. You downsize, you give some things away, you clean things out, you relocate. You may downsize 2 or 3 times. You change family systems. So there's many opportunities and pitfalls, possibly, of making inheritance decisions. Obviously, that also includes death, but it's often much more than that. So I want you to consider that. We also know that there's really powerful messages in who gets what and when and how. And that's true for both money and possessions. And we could spend hours sharing stories, I'm sure, from our own families as well as from those we've heard from over the years about what those powerful messages can be. That is, I will add, that's one of the rewards, I think, to teaching this program, is that you're going to hear lots of stories. Some are heart-wrenching, and some are really have lots of joy in them. So it is a rewarding program to teach and to deal with the topic, even though it's really sensitive. We know that, again, the messages are sometimes intended and sometimes not. Things such as the fact that you got something proves that mom loved you the best, to dad knew I wanted that and gave it to you instead. Lots of messages, again, about relationships and family traditions are impacted. Perhaps most importantly, as many of us are interested in family relationships and family well-being, we know that inheritance has the potential to really impact those relationships, particularly parent-child relationships and sibling relationships. 2 of the really most powerful ones that we know really impact health and well-being. So there are really major reasons to address inheritance. We also know that inheritance has been and will continue to be an issue. It's nothing new, so to speak. But we have, given the aging population and the number and proportion of baby boomers turning 60 plus and the fastest growing proportion, the numbers aren't so important on this chart. It's just the trend is there are more and more target audiences out there for us to do education with. And consider that you might be talking about a parent who's 96, their oldest child who's 75, and maybe the youngest is 62. So consider that. I think too often we have this impression of when we're talking about parent-child relationships, kind of the image that comes to our mind. So it could look very different from that as well. Some of the relevance, I think, in terms of inheritance, I wanted to share a couple slides that reflect some of the articles that I've done interviews for and have mentioned pie plate over the few years here. And it really is, I think the media interest reinforces that it's an issue that is of great interest to the majority of consumers. And particularly media folks are very interested in writing it for the perspective from boomers and siblings. It's really an international issue, not at all exclusive to U.S. families. So it's gotten lots of attention. With that, I want to step back and give you a sense of the work that we've done over the years, and that there are resources to help, and we know that they can make a difference. I know, again, that many of you are not new to pie plate, and others may be, so I'm trying to hit the middle road here of who knows what. But a brief history lesson. If you think about going back to 1994, try to think about where you were at that point in time, what you were doing. Had you ever heard of, was inheritance on your plan of work, so to speak? It wasn't on mine, actually, as a state faculty in family economics and aging. I was dealing with a lot of other issues, and we had a team that came together of 5 extension educators and myself. The extension educators across Minnesota had been doing a lot with farm succession planning, and in those workshops were focused mostly on titled possessions, the land, and started to hear and get lots of questions about the possessions. And that really initiated the need to start the program we now call Who Gets Grandma's Yellow Pie Plate. It really is built on recognizing that personal possessions are often more of a conflict in families than money. And it also recognizes that whole issue again of how few escape decisions about the possessions. We all have possessions that we accumulate, or most of us do. It also recognizes, Pie Plate is built on trying to recognize the complexities of the issue. Very similar dynamics in some cases as title property, but also brings some unique challenges. And this actually quote is from talking with a family member over the years, who said, "My mom's funeral was a piece of cake compared to cleaning out the family home and closing the door for the last time." And I think that has lots of meaning in it. It reflects lots of different things about the realities of cleaning out a house, which if you've done that, you can understand how challenging that is, and how it also symbolizes in many respects many things we're not going to talk about, but the importance of home and family history. So we know that dealing with possessions can be more complex because it involves memories, and the objects are related to family history, and it's interwoven with the complexity of often long, complex family relationships. So there are some unique challenges to non-title transfers that Pie Plate is addressing. I'll highlight a couple of those. Again, it's much more emotional. The sentimental, since I can't spit that out here, the sentimental meanings that are associated with objects. Again, it may be that an object has been used for years and years in a certain family ritual or tradition. And we know that being fair is a lot more complex. That value and meaning can really differ. You might have 3 siblings, and one looks at an oak table in the house and has wonderful memories of playing games at that table with family. Another sibling might know that she could get about $800 for that table at an antique sale and really could use $800. And another might not see anything in it. It just might be something to go to Goodwill. So that offers challenges because there's no, it's difficult to measure the worth or value, and each individual typically sees different worth or value. And it's often impossible to divide items equally, as we often think about being able to do with money. We also know that the planning and distribution methods and consequences are a lot less clear. People don't understand necessarily the role that personal possessions play in estate planning, or really how to make informed decisions. It's a lot more than putting masking tape on the bottom of items. So Pie Plate is really developed to address key protective factors that we know can make a difference in family relationships and in inheritance planning. We began by doing our own research around trying to understand those risk and protective factors, and you're going to hear those as we go along and talk about the program. Who Gets Grandma's Yellow Pie Plate has really served a key role. It's addressed a lot of the, just as you're going to hear me say, there's not much research on families and inheritance, particularly around possessions. There's also a big educational gap, and PiePlate has been able to step in and address some of those gaps. Many estate planning resources simply don't address possessions, or they'll refer to add one line, divide my possessions equally, which we know doesn't work. They might offer kind of one-size-fits-all simple solutions. I know many resources will say just put a dollar value on everything and get rid of the emotion, which I would argue isn't possible or very likely to be effective. And again, many don't really address some of the fairness complexities. So PiePlate has addressed those niches and has served a major role in helping fill that educational gap. Almost everyone always asks me, where did you get the title? Where's the title from? And for those of you who have experience with PiePlate and have seen the video, you will have seen Andrea and the person who told us that it happened to come up and sitting around an extension office in southwest Minnesota. And Andrea simply shared, we were in the middle of working on this project in the beginning stages and struggling with really not having a title, so to speak. And she simply said and shared her story, and that's where Yellow PiePlate came from. So it really has been a wonderful metaphor that people understand, that we know the title works. People immediately get what it means and will typically say, well, in my family it's, and proceed to tell you their story. So that's where the title came from. So I want to, if I can, get you to do a quick poll with me. Again, expecting that there's a range of experience out there, possibly. It would be nice to know, feel free to answer more than one, if it makes sense. And give me some sense of your experience. Give you a few minutes to respond. How do I tell when they're done? Yeah, okay, so it's not added up yet. Give you another quick minute to respond. So we have some variation, as again I expected. It's just helpful to know. I know that if you are with Extension, many majority of the states in Extension have potentially used PiePlate, delivered PiePlate in many ways over the years. We also have a range of other professionals and practitioners out there who have been using PiePlate. And we also know that there's been some turnover and people do retire in Extension. And so we know we have, I've found in the last few years, we seem to be at a point where we have a lot of newer people who are wanting to learn about and gain some exposure to PiePlate. So thanks for answering that poll. You can see the range of experience there. So one of the things I want to really focus on is are you prepared and up to date? And introduce you to, reintroduce some of you to what tools are available, some of the key things we've learned about over the years about target audiences and knowing what works. So let me start with an overview of what products currently exist. Because PiePlate, I'm going to call it PiePlate to shorten it out as opposed to always saying, who gets Grandma's Yellow PiePlate? So bear with me when I do that. We have a variety of products that have been developed over the years and revised and redeveloped over time. And you can find, we have a website of which you can literally Google Yellow PiePlate and find it. We also have a link available to you to go directly to the preview and order page that's on that website. so you can learn more about the products and look at them. But basically what, over the years, we have our main standalone resource that really is what family members need in their hands to share and work on is the workbook. That workbook is available both in print or in a fillable PDF. And again, there's a link there. The price hasn't changed over 22 years. I'm not sure what that says about us not being up with the times, but we know it's a really good value. It was a good value at the time. And that's one of the reasons that we really asked, besides protecting the quality, that we asked people not to copy it beyond sharing with family members. So that remains. If you haven't seen this version of the workbook, I encourage you to get it, and I'll talk about the next product that this workbook comes with. And it really does cover, the gist of the workbook is it's reading material as well as worksheets for both owners and receivers, and it helps people work through the 6 decision-making concepts that PiePlate is built upon. So that's a major resource that we really know works. It's really important to get it in people's hands. In addition to that, we also know that we've had a lot of demand and interest in in-person workshops. And the audiences for that have ranged from those who are planning in advance. Again, the older property owners, potentially the older generation who's recognizing they need to do something, to the spouses and partners of those owners, and the adult siblings kids in that family. We also know that, and didn't really expect this from the beginning, but we have a range of individuals who are going to be responsible for an estate and making the decisions, or they're really dealing with it after the fact, after someone's died and there haven't been decisions made, or they're really in that position of having to work it out, so to speak, as people will say, and they're searching for help. And so they're also a key audience for those workshops. Over the years, again, we've done a variety of impact evaluation for PiePlate, and we know that a 1-hour workshop, as all of you know, isn't very long. There's only so much you can do and expect. But these are the learning objectives for that workshop, and we know that it does improve knowledge about, again, the importance of planning for both titled and non-titled. We drill into folks the 6 key factors for successful transfer, and addressing those, we help people understand how to legally make their wishes known about possessions, and that being fair does not always mean being equal, and illustrate a lot of the complexity, again, in terms of emotion and family relationships. And most importantly, I think we lead people to the workbook, to tools that really will help them provide more in-depth help for them to jump in and start those conversations and plan ahead. So it does change knowledge. We also know that we can change intentions and planning behaviors in terms of, again, getting conversations started, conversations about where we agree and don't agree around a range of issues, learning what possessions have meaning, getting people to start sharing the stories about those possessions, what's meaningful and why, some of the family history, and obviously putting their wishes in writing, not just sharing informally, but putting wishes in writing, preparing a will, and creating that separate listing of personal possessions. So that's the good news, is we know that even a 1-hour workshop can make a difference. With that, because we know the 1-hour workshop is kind of the another key product that consumers want, we have a new product that's really focused on delivering that 1-hour workshop really well, based on, again, what we've experienced. So the new product that I'm talking about is a Workshop Facilitators Toolkit, and it is came out last year. It really is, again, test your memory for some of you who have a 3-ring binder on your shelf. I encourage you to put that on the back shelf or even recycle it. For anyone who has older products, whether they're PowerPoints or workbooks, I really encourage you to update yourself and purchase the new Facilitators Toolkit. I was thinking about not kind of feeling like Apple and the iPhone and that everything's new, and I thought, well, it's been 22 years. It's been a while since we've updated this, so it's probably time. I think we priced it right, so it's a good deal. If you get the Facilitators Toolkit, you get the workbook, the DVD, and on the CD, you get the following things that are listed. So you really have everything you need to teach, all the updated resources, and to self-educate yourself, to dive in and get a lot of the background on the research and such. So we think it's a good deal. Again, you're not going to see dramatically new content, but you will see a lot of best practices reflected in what's there. So the most common question I get about this is, if I have the old one, do I need to get the new one? And I would say yes. And again, because we've updated the look and feel and because we really think it's affordable. So you know a little more about what's in this toolkit, you're going to get what you would expect, I would hope. In terms of facilitator tools, you'll get a PowerPoint presentation with notes that include key points, stories, activities. We have a one-page participant guide that highlights the 6 key factors and includes order information on it that you can use as a handout. And again, the content for that workshop is really focused on these 6 key factors that we found in the research about what was most important. So a lot of the content flow is around, why is this a sensitive issue? The importance of understanding your goals, figuring out what you want to accomplish. The issues around fairness, that belongings have different meanings to different individuals. Discussing distribution options and possible consequences. And addressing the issue of potential conflicts if they arise. So those are the 6 key, kind of the foundation of what you're going to find in Pie Plate, whether it's the workbook or a presentation. You're also going to see some familiar activities, I would say. We still use the Winnie the Pooh book. I think it's a great example of getting people to think about what fair means and reinforces how you just simply can't divide some things equally. And that there's not going to be one answer for every family, no simple solution. So it's, again, the workshop materials include a variety of activities for you. We also have included evaluation tools that have been used over the years that can either do immediate post-program or follow-up, depending on if you want to do some evaluation. In addition, we talk through how to add more depth and links if you're interested. Again, our experience is that most people want that kind of magical 1-hour workshop, maybe an hour and a half if you're lucky. I think it works well with a lot of existing groups that we're going to talk about as target audiences here. And so they're not particularly interested in more depth and length, but there are some audiences that are. We know it can also work. So that is why in a basic, what I'd call a basic 1-hour workshop, we don't use the DVD. It's 13 minutes, It introduces the issue quickly, and you could easily expand the workshop and use it as well. People also ask about whether we require the workbook. Again, that would be ideal, but not all groups, not all organizations have the resources to spend on that, and not everyone wants the workbook. So we talk through different options. You can clearly build in the cost of that workbook. Some places are very willing to invest in that, particularly when you can get quantities. You can get 25 or more for only $7.50 a copy. So it's really makes it a good deal. It saves folks shipping and handling in general. So there are ways to add depth and links if you're interested in doing that. We also really talk about and would ask you to protect the quality and integrity of who gets grandma's yellow pie plate. We know, again, the title works. As much as you might be tempted to change the title to who gets, I don't know, Grandpa's hoe or Grandpa's Green Bay Packer tickets or whatever it might be, we ask that you not do that, that you really keep the title and keep the integrity, and we have a few other things around that. If you ever have any questions or concerns about what you can and can't do, don't hesitate to contact me and ask. I really appreciate being asked as opposed to making assumptions. Sounds like a family member that might do the same thing. So with that, again, I want to spend a little bit of time learning from some of you about what success you've had with different target audiences. Again, we talked about those who are planning in advance and potentially after a death. We've talked about the fact that inheritance isn't only at death, so there's people who are planning in advance for maybe downsizing. They're making those decisions about gifting and that over their life course, possibly. So I am curious, here's your second poll, of what opportunities have you used, or do you see, if you haven't had experience yet, where elders and adult children naturally gather? What do you think would work to get to people who are the target audience for this program? You could chime in on that. Again, there's obviously more than one answer possible. All right. I'm asking this question in part because I think sometimes we focus more than we should on having a separate event and getting people to come to us. And obviously, there's a lot of opportunities to reach people where they naturally gather, and a lot more potential to reach more people, I believe. So many of you agreed with that. Obviously, you've had success. And again, I encourage you to look at the chat box. I'm not that great at multitasking here to read everything in the chat box and talk. So Elizabeth, if you want to chime in at any point and interpret things, feel free to. But it appears that many of you have found that going to people at work, obviously that is a key place that I think has a lot of potential. The human resources folks are often searching for workshops, and I feel like, at least in our area, they're really expanding to go beyond what you might think is really traditional wellness workshops. They're seeing, okay, wellness is more than the health issues, literally the health issues, and they're really expanding that to some of the financial literacy, elder care issues. So I think you will find human resources folks very interested. Faith communities we've had a lot of success with, and that could be a range of separate kind of subgroups that faith communities might have, a range of opportunities. Range of service clubs, organizations, obviously, and on down the list. So please feel free to share other ideas in the chat box for others. I think, again, the more that we can build on each other's successes, there are, again, many chances to reach people, again, where they naturally gather, or get the word out, even in newsletters and that kind of thing that are not isolated from where people are. So I encourage you to think of the natural opportunities. I also encourage you to really think about professional audiences that are out there. Again, there are a host of practitioners that interact with family members who are facing decisions about possessions, from senior move managers who are helping families navigate those moves, to hospice folks who are dealing with families needing to face end-of-life decisions, including what to do with how to clean up the home and what to do with the stuff. Funeral directors, on down the line. There's been a range of folks in senior housing interested. Again, that's been a natural opportunity. So in this case, we're really talking about reaching the professionals and training those professionals in core concepts and helping them understand that there are resources out there. Many are greatly appreciative because they may not, let's take a financial planner or a state attorney, their expertise is hopefully the law, but they may not have a lot of expertise in family relationships and dynamics. And so there are lots of opportunities for them to utilize the video, utilize the workbook with their clients, and it helps eliminate time that they might have to spend otherwise with a client. So I encourage you to think broadly about practitioners. With that, again, I encourage you to think about where you're at and what you need to do to be prepared and up to date. Again, this is some selected things from the worksheet, the checklist that's in the toolkit. If you haven't gathered and tried out different new teaching materials, that's important. Immerse yourself in the workbook. Give it a shot. Try the worksheets. Understand the content. Find the website. Know how to find the free articles that are there. They're really usable for newsletters and handouts. Again, familiarize yourself with the links and the information that people may be asking you about. I also really encourage you to do state-specific homework on your estate planning laws. Not, again, that you are setting yourself up to provide any legal advice, but it is important that you really understand succession laws and what are the options in your state if you don't have anything in place. And particularly in the case of pie plate, and the toolkit walks you through this, understanding what's legal in terms of can you provide a separate listing in your will to indicate who should get what. And in most states, that is the case, but you really do need to clarify that that's true. And last but not least, I think we pride ourselves in being research-based, and the content is really based on the most recent research. And in the revised toolkit, you will find a new research summary. I am going to really slide over some of this quickly, because of time, and I want to leave time for questions, but it's in the toolkit, and it's also on the PowerPoint slides for those of you who want to spend more time. I do want to paint a little bit of picture of how much progress have we made in the past 20 years in research. And honestly, it doesn't take me very long to paint that picture because there's been very little progress. So regretfully, it is really amazing, I think, in terms of the relevance of inheritance and how common it is that there's so little research. I think we can all also probably understand how it's often hard to have data and information that we really need at the right time. So regretfully, there's only a handful of studies that have really looked at personal possessions and inheritance. When it has been looked at, though, what commonly comes up is the theme around fairness and issues around what that fairness means in a certain family system. And it shouldn't surprise us if that comes up because fairness is an issue in all kinds of family resource allocations. So it should be expected. If you look back over the past, and I chose 46 just because I went back in time, there's been only 4 studies in the past 46 years that have examined some kind of fairness and inheritance dynamics. And 2 of those are the work that we did here as a basis for Pie Plate. So that's why I said it doesn't take too long to get a sense of what's out there. There's been a lot more work internationally. Again, there's been about 8 studies in the last 22 years that provide perspective from different contexts, government contexts, social norms contexts. But again, I'm going to breeze over these because of time. But I encourage you, all of these are cited in the research summary that's provided in the toolkit. If you haven't, and if you are interested at all in inheritance, it's not extremely recent, but it's a really good read, as people say. It's called Passing On. It's by Finch and Mason, and it was done in England. And gets a lot into actually step-family relationships and cohabitating and changing family structures of interest in England at that time. So it has a lot of interesting insight. There's also been some interesting work out of Australia that Goodnow and Lawrence that built on some of the research that we had done here, and they've really tried to add insight into some of the competing goals that families have. And I think one of the themes that always strikes me when I look at their work is not wanting to let things get into the wrong hands. And I think that's a wonderful question to ask people is, so what would getting in the wrong hands mean in your family? And what would you absolutely not want to get in the wrong hands? So again, lots of issues around complex family structures, divorce, remarriage, who's in, who's out, issues around boundaries. Another study, this one from Canada, really, again, reinforced a lot of the communication challenges between the generations, the sensitivity that we know that's there about suggesting that someone might die someday, the mortality issues. And again, it's often the kids that don't want to hear that, not necessarily the parents. So I think that's interesting. And again, the assumptions about if I don't say anything, what that means and what people take that to mean are really quite fascinating. I also want to let you know that we are in the middle of analyzing a lot of data in a project here that started in 2011. It's an Ag Experimentation funded project, and we are really trying to address a lot of the gaps. Excuse the typo on the slide there that I see. It really is trying to understand the meaning and experience. We're focusing on fairness. And to the best of my knowledge, we're the only study that's really looking at both titled and non-titled in the study. And we have data from one older person and 2 adult kids in the same family system. So we're able to really look within and across family systems. So, PiePlate continues, 22 years and going strong. And just to alert you, in the next, I'll just say year, our goal is to add some online workshops for family members and for training practitioners, so you can look for that. And I am flying along here, but I want to allow some time for Q&A. If Elizabeth, if you want to help navigate things that haven't been answered.
And Marlene, this is Jeannie. Since we started late, you can have all the time you need.
Okay.
So I think there were 2 issues that or questions that came through. One was Rebecca Travnicek in Missouri suggested going in together and doing a group order on some of these materials. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on how that could work. And then there has been questions about how do you extend the workshops. You know, you had mentioned the 1 hour and then some ideas for extending. So maybe go back and revisit that. So those 2 questions are the ones that I've seen. If I've missed anything, please, everyone, feel free to retype it in the chat.
And in case I forget, the last slide also has my phone number and email, and I would hope you would feel free to contact me if you have other questions, or if you just want to personally talk through whatever or alternatives you're considering. So don't hesitate to do that. Adding depth to the workshop. Again, there's multiple alternatives. You could add the DVD. I think you can also build in the workbook and offer time to really go into one of those 6 issues in more depth. The one I think has the most, I would say, the richness that others don't cover is that of fairness. And so I think it's really easy to add a lot more depth on what fair means. So I think it, again, depends on knowing your target audience and knowing what they want and how long. In the best of worlds, you could have older adults and aging parents come together from the same family system for workshops. I think that's easier said than done, but could happen. So hopefully that answers a little of that. I think the other thing that I know people have used that I want to mention is we have some work here in Minnesota on transferring forestry land and getting at, again, the role of family dynamics and communication. And it's really a matter of merging some ag estate planning and forestry planning and sustainability with Who Gets Grandma's Yellow Pie Plate. So I know there's some energy and interest in kind of multidisciplinary, getting the concepts from Pie Plate into other related programs. I'm not sure how to answer the one that Rebecca had about group orders. I encourage you to contact me about that. Again, I know some states have gone in, and I think it works differently in every state how things are being done. So I'd be glad to brainstorm with you on that. And are there other questions?
Yeah, actually, there is an interesting question from Wendy, who, following up on what you were saying about some of the research that you're currently involved with, and do you anticipate that will alter the existing materials as people are considering purchasing this version? So, which is always a question, right?
Right. Will there be new and different things in the future? I hope so, but I don't see anything, I would say, dramatic in the next few years. I will say I have a dream of doing a fairness toolkit that really is focused on fairness and would have more in-depth materials around both outcomes and how do you decide that, as well as processes and what fairness means. So that's a lot of the focus of the research. So I wouldn't wait for that. I don't see it. I think a key 1-hour workshop is still going to be focused on those 6 issues, and what we'll be doing in the future is a lot more depth on fairness. So, and will be related to both titled and non-titled. So it'll be a little bit different focus, but that research should be have a variety of manuscripts in process right now, and really looking at practical tools in the next few years. And hopefully those could be, again, some of the online resources that are out there.
Great, and we're getting suggestions in the chat box for what people are doing. Someone had an icebreaker to have 2 people from the audience act out a script that's talking about sharing a family item. Someone also actually brings a yellow pie plate and asks them to talk about what their pie plate is. I guess, and Becky clarified she was thinking about it as a single state, so for Missouri.
Okay.
And yeah, as Jeannie said, if there are things that you want to circle back to, you might have an opportunity to do that now, or I would encourage everyone to keep asking questions if you have them in the chat box, so that we know there are still some questions out there, or as Marlene said, feel free to contact her, and I know she will respond to you.
And I will try to follow up with the chat box questions as well after we get the recording here. So try to be responsive to those that I haven't answered. Some of you are talking about ways to make the workshop come to life. And again, I know there's many different ways to do that. It's wonderful to be able to start building your own repertoire of stories to illustrate different concepts. And yes, you will find that everyone wants to tell their story. So that's also a danger. You could easily have day-long workshops just telling your stories. So again, as an educator, you really have to figure out how to manage that. And we do talk about that some. So with that, I really encourage you to have fun with Who Gets Grandma's Yellow Pie Plate. I think for those of you who taught it, you will, I hope you would say that it's one of the most rewarding programs you've taught, not because it's easy or simple or trivial, but because it really is addressing a critical need. And I think we have many, many opportunities to make a difference in inheritance planning. So thanks for joining in.
Well, thanks, Marlene. That's a really great summary. And again, we appreciate you being with us. I know here in Kansas, we are excited to be using the new materials. And as you said, there's always new people and different audiences experiencing the need to talk about non-titled properties. So I think it's something that we can always use, and we have new colleagues, and so it's a timely topic. And I just want to follow up. Barbara O'Neill left a last note in the chat box about hope to see you all at the end of the month on April 29th for the Money Smart Week chat at 1 p.m. Eastern. So we'll sign off for today. Look for the video in a couple days. So thanks a lot, Marlene.
Thank you.